I feel that I'll be willing to show you the literature. I'd be willing to talk to you about demonstrations, whatever you want. But I'm not about to come up and sit here and have you change things around about basalts and granites. I mean, it's well established in the literature. I can give you that.
I'm happy that this has occurred tonight because it's not the first time that I've heard such a claim. In fact, the letter I just got through reading to you a few minutes ago, and I'll bring his name out now. A geologist up in Canada wrote me a letter. In fact, he's written me several letters. And in these letters, he's pointed out supposedly some things that relate to things that I've been publishing on and so forth. And in the context of this, one of the letters he wrote to me, this is now back in February, he said, a granite sample has indeed been synthesized in a laboratory. Now, from what the gentleman just said, of course, you've got to have high pressures, you've got to have high temperatures, and you've got to have slow cooling. Oh, pardon me, you didn't say high pressures. I should say that the evolutionary view of the formation of granite is such that granite supposedly form at great depths under high pressures. So I'll add this. This is a part of the conventional view. He goes on to say, there is a first-year geology course offered here over the television in the form of a 22-hour series called Understanding the Earth. In the program on igneous rocks, they showed a film that was taken back in the early 60s where a granite sample was crushed to a fine powder, poured into a small copper pot, water added, placed in an apparatus, and subjected to high temperatures. The result was a crystallized specimen about the size of your thumb. He said he had this on the tape. In other words, a granite sample has been synthesized in the laboratory. Well, I was really interested. Since I had issued this test, it was subjected to severe scrutiny at the Arkansas trial in 1981. And I will stop just for a moment to say that in 1985, the magazine Science published a report indicating there again was no science in creation science. And I attempted at that particular time to have a rebuttal published. And it was unsuccessful because the magazine indicated that they would not handle anything relating to creation science. But this last summer, as I've indicated to you, again, I issued the challenge. It's been in the EOS. But anyway, I was really interested. Here's someone who's saying that, you know, it's all on TV. So I got a copy of this TV film, Understanding the Earth, and the particular series relating to the synthesis of a granite. And sure enough, when the material came back to me, I actually got the outline for the course. I noticed, though, that in looking at the TV video and looking at the outline of the course, it didn't really say that a granite per se had been synthesized. It said, you know, this is suggestive of how granites supposedly synthesized. Anyway, what was shown on the tape was a powdered granite, and the powdered granite was crushed and put into a furnace, and put into, I should say, a gold or a platinum envelope, and it was taken up to 700 or 800 degrees centigrade, and then it was sufficient water and so forth, it was allowed to cool over a several-month period of time. Well, I wanted to actually find the samples that were in that experiment. It wasn't good enough for me just to say, well, you know, it looks like a granite. I didn't know. Maybe it was supposedly a granite. So I called the gentleman who had done the series now in the mid-1970s. and I asked him to begin to look very particularly at that segment. And I said, I want to know, first of all, did you do the experiment? He said, no, we didn't do the experiment. We took it from an old Encyclopedia Britannica film. And so I said, well, can you tell me more about it? He said, I'll go back and look. And he went back and looked, but he couldn't find any more additional information about it. He only had one name, and through that one name, I began to call around the country, various geologists, and I finally was led to someone else, and they led me to someone else, and they led me to someone else. And I finally found the gentleman who had actually done the experiment of supposed granite synthesis. And indeed, he admitted that this is a part of, of an ongoing research program, and they were carrying on at that particular time. Well, I said, I'm very much interested in getting information on the samples that you were trying to synthesize at that particular time, the granite ones especially. And he said, well, that was some 20 or more years ago. And so I continued to check. I got back with him, and he has since retired. He said that he thought he perhaps had a piece from one of the experiments, but he was way out west and he wasn't coming back east until this last week, April 9, in fact. And so I called all over the place trying to get other samples of people who had done these kinds of experiments and supposedly was going to show me this information on granite synthesis. Well, I called him Friday afternoon, just last week. He was back at his home, and I said, I'm still looking for this sample that you had indicated was possibly still in existence. And indeed, he had returned home, and he had been looking for it for 4 days and was unable to find it. Well, I encouraged him to keep on looking and told him I would get back in touch with him. I guess he felt, in fact, he told me he thought, it had been left at some university someplace and he didn't have it. Saturday night, though, I received a telephone call. He had found this specimen that was a part of this granite synthesis experiment of 20 years ago. It was in another state, and all the stores, of course, are closed as far as delivery is concerned, Federal Express. But I paid to have it shipped Delta Dash from his city to mine. If you turn on the 35 millimeter projector again, you'll see a picture of it. There it is. There's a sample that was a part of a granite synthesis experiment over 20 years ago. 700 or 800 degrees centigrade, melted, cooled down now, and if I understood what you said a few minutes ago, you could do it in a week. Well, what we're talking about is something here, and that glass slide right below the penny is a granite sample that was ground up, crushed, melted, and cooled, not over a period of a week, which you said you were able to do and come up with a granite. That was cooled down over a period of 2 months. And it bears a remarkable resemblance to another piece of rock which is adjacent to it. If you go back to the previous slide, I'll talk about the other rock which is adjacent to it. Okay. Claim has been made tonight that granite can be synthesized like the ones I have up here. But as I was in the last stages of writing my book, and I realized that such events might take place, such as what has happened tonight, I'm very, very happy that it has happened, a thought occurred to me. The laboratory of nature has provided us with an answer. In fact, granite is melted in the earth. In fact, granite comes up through pipes and extrudes on the surface of the earth from time to time. And when it does, sometimes it becomes a glass, which is obsidian. If it cools lower, such as the rock you're seeing right here, technically, I think geologists say it's only a rhyolite if it's on the surface, but there are other people who are geophysicists who say It's a rhyolite, even if it's under the surface and cools from a granitic melt. In other words, what I'm saying is what you're seeing on the screen right now is the result, is the rock that resulted from the cooling of a granite melt in the earth. And it cooled slowly. And the reason I know it cooled very slowly is because the writing on the rock, you can't see the one very easily, is 1,683.3 feet down below the surface of the earth. Now, when that cooled, the rock, the melt itself, the granite melt, did not recrystallize as the original granite. It recrystallized as a fine-grained rhyolite, meaning that the crystals of the quartz and the feldspar are very, very small, whereas the crystals in the granite crystal, which I have up here, are macroscopic, millimeters in size in some cases, and in other cases, such as the rock I'm showing, the material I'm showing right here, inches. In some places, there's a muscovite crystal 9.5 by 7 feet, 3 feet thick. In another place, an enormous crystal, 14 feet, 33 feet long, weight not less than 90 tons. We can turn the lights back on now. And so in response to the comment that it's easy to do granite synthesis, I point to the natural laboratory, the laboratory of nature, in which granite has been melted and allowed to cool an innumerable number of times. And the material does not result in a reformation of a granite, but what geologists call a rhyolite. The only way that you could possibly falsify the comment that I just made, or to do anything about the falsification test, is not to refer to a report. The reports have been read. The laboratory of nature says it comes back to a rhyolite, not to a granite. I want to make a suggestion then. If indeed the day ever comes when you are successful in doing what you claim to be able to do tonight, my telephone number will be given to you. And you can call me, immediately call WTVK Channel 10, make it a citywide public event, statewide, whatever you would like to do, and publicly put your evidence where your expertise has been tonight. And I'll be very, very happy to be there again. Yes. In other words, I'm saying it can't be done, and until you produce it, the laboratory of nature says that the experiment is going to fail. In fact, the experimental synthesis experiment that has already been done has been shown to be nothing except something extremely similar to the rhyolite, which is what the laboratory of nature says it has to be anyway. Yes?
Even if our geology professor did melt and create some granite, like what you said,
Come up to the microphone.
suppose that your professor here did create some granite, just like what you have in nature, and it took a week and a half, whatever. I thought the point is, would it have the polonium in it? Would it have the polonium halos? Isn't that the point?
Well, of course it wouldn't have the polonium halos. I was trying to get everyone the benefit of the doubt. I was saying they can, if they could really synthesize a piece of granite, I was going to make it easy for them. Of course it wouldn't have any polonium halos in it. But you see, I've broken the problem down so it's so simple. I mean, people keep saying that the polonium halos are only the result of natural radioactivity. And so I said, if that's true, I'll even let you take a piece of granite today. If you really think that the polonium halos are only a natural phenomenon, take a piece of the biotite or a piece of the phlogopite, something similar to this. If you heat it up, you'll destroy all the halos. Then take that piece of sample into the laboratory and produce some more polonium halos in it. And I'll say even that is a falsification of what I'm saying about the halos being created. You're absolutely right. A piece of granite formed in that way, even if it were done, would not have the polonium halos. But I'm breaking the problem down to a point where I'm saying these are the created rocks. And I'm saying, you know, if you could do something like that, synthesize it, then go put in a halo in it even after it was synthesized, then I would say you doubly falsify what I'm saying with respect to creation. But I'm not going to back down tonight and say, you know, what if this and so. What I'm saying is the laboratory of nature has shown it's not going to happen. I've investigated the granite synthesis experiment that has taken place. A geologist wrote to me and said, and I will quote, in fact, he sent the letter to Dr. Press just the other day. He's writing to Dr. Press, and he's again repeating the claim that a piece of granite has been synthesized, and it was done on that TV Ontario film. And that's exactly what it's taken me about 2 months to run down a 20-year-old sample. If you can imagine, an experiment that was done 20 or more years ago. The scientist indicated he thought, of course, it meant something to me for tonight's presentation. And indeed it did.
Thank you.
Very good.
Seems obvious then that if he grabbed a piece of radioactive polonium from Oak Ridge and had it right next to his furnace and threw it in, quickly mixed it, that 22 minutes later it would be gone, or I propose.
The half-life is only 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
You see, it's not only just the polonium itself that is coming and disappearing so rapidly, it is putting that amount of radioactivity in a tiny speck. When I was there, I worked with various radionuclides, various proportions. People who work with radioactivity will tell you that polonium is one of the most active, mobile radioactive elements known. To what I'm saying even today, with all the technology we have, I'm saying that there is almost an impossible problem of accumulating naturally that number of radioactive atoms of polonium within a 1 micron speck of any kind. You see, because 1 micron, 10 to the 9th atoms of polonium will occupy about 1 cubic micron. So when the polonium halos formed here, they had pure, just about pure polonium in the center, and pure polonium-218, by the way. So I'm only barely skimming the surface of the technical problems that are involved in trying to explain polonium halos on a conventional uniformitarian basis. But you can't imagine how happy I am tonight that someone has come forward and said that it is possible to do that, because now we can be watching in the days ahead. I'll have my telephone on an answering service, and WTVK and Channel 10 and all the rest of us here at the University of Tennessee will be anxiously waiting for this to occur. Yes?
Well, I'd like to see if I've got this straight now. You take a piece of granite that's already been formed, you heat it up, you destroy the halos, correct? Okay, now, I've got 3 minutes to form large grains and have polonium halos trapped in it. Is that correct?
Well,
Or approximately?
no. The conventional view is that the granite had to form slowly. And so therefore, as the professor was saying a few minutes ago, he was saying it would take him about a week to do it. But you see, what I'm saying is that he's not going to do it in a week. He's not going to do it in a month or a year. He's not going to ever do it. I'm saying that the way this rock was created is impossible to duplicate. I'm saying that the implications of what we find in this rock are such to show that it was created very rapidly, it was created in such a way that it can't be reproduced. And not only just the granite itself. I'm saying that you could take, I offer the same falsification test for this piece of biotite. Reproduce a piece of biotite, melt it, whatever you want to do, dissolve it, and grow another crystal of biotite like this. And again, I'd say that my view of creation, this evidence for creation, this being a primordial rock, I'll take that as a falsification. So it's just not the granite itself. I've given people a leeway. I'm dealing with just a pure crystal of a mineral. So there's a little difference there. They would not agree that on their basis that the rock ever had to cool very rapidly. In fact, they would be saying that the larger the crystal, the longer it would take to form. And this is why I took pains to read from this paper in the American Mineralogist, that there are some crystals in nature today which weigh like this, or very similar to this, a phlogopite, which weigh as much as 40 tons. That is a single mineral formed, of a specific chemical composition, and in the general way of looking at it, it is a mineral that supposedly formed over, the bigger the crystal, the longer it took to form. So something that, if this took a week or supposedly like this to cool down, something that was 40 tons, I'll let somebody else estimate how many millions of years supposedly that took. But go ahead.
But all those halos would have escaped over 3 minutes then.
Well, after about several minutes, the polonium is gone. So unless you do it, it's true. If I wanted to be very rigorous about it, if I wasn't, well, I'll simply say this. If I wanted to be very rigorous and say reproduce what you have in here now, what's in here now, I'd say take this piece of granite in the laboratory, heat it up, melt it, let it begin to cool, and not only when you need to get something like this when you finish, but it should also have polonium halos in it. That's the real test right there. Well, I wanted to try to make it easy on people.
So that means if I had the knowledge to do this in the facilities, I'd have to do all this in 3 minutes, have the same grains, and have the halos trapped in it.
Well, if you really wanted to reproduce what is a part of the primordial Genesis rocks of the planet, yes, you would have to reproduce the granite, and you'd have to reproduce the polonium halos in the granite. That's true. Absolutely.
That I would like to see.
I would too. I see we need the moderators up here because I see there are questioners in the back. Would you want to stand up and let one of you stand up and invite the individuals to come forward?
Well, I'm Bill Bloss in the physics department, and I'd like to compliment you on a fine piece of work in the radiation halos, and also on a rather, in my estimation, creative explanation for the ones that are difficult to explain on the basis of the uranium chain. I'm bothered, however, by a comment in your book on page 49, where you say the last chapter emphasized that when I associate polonium halos in granites with extinct natural radioactivity, scientists understand this to imply only a few minutes elapsed from nucleosynthesis to the formation of the solid Earth. Okay, well, that follows. And you say, as figure 2.4 illustrates, which was up on the board, only nucleosynthesis that could accomplish this feat is nucleogenesis, initiated by the Creator, that of virtually instantaneous creation of the Earth. I would suggest that you consider a parallel. I'm sure you're familiar with the line spectrum of hydrogen, and in 1900 it was not explainable, not understood, although it could be calculated with the Balmer series. Perhaps Balmer or Bohr might have come along and suggested that these were, in fact, Genesis atoms. And it would be very much similar, in a sense, to the argument that you're making, because I cannot explain this on any other basis than the one that I put forward, and because nobody will refute the argument that it must stand. And it doesn't really follow that that's true. It doesn't follow that you're wrong, but it doesn't follow we should all jump up and try to refute what you say, mainly because you haven't broadened the spectrum of your argument to include a preponderance of the evidence.
I appreciate you saying what you did. Let me just ask you, in the context of your comment about the Balmer lines, and of course the fact that in 1900 they could not all be accounted for. Now, what I'm saying, I think, is substantially different than the analogy example you've just given, for the following reason. At the time that we were you're discussing, bringing out here, which of course was the turn of the century, we both know that quantum mechanics had not even come into existence. We know that the Bohr atom was not around at that particular time. As you say, there was some basis for understanding some of the spectral lines, but not all of them. Now, is it not true that we realize, the history of physics tells us, that the physicists of that day realized that they were coming into a period where new ideas, new concepts in physics were going to be generated? As we both know, in the late 1860s, we have Hertz, we have Maxwell with electromagnetism, we have the discovery of radioactivity, we had X-rays in 1897, Becquerel, and then around the turn of the century, radioactivity being discovered, then alpha radioactivity by Rutherford, alpha, beta, and gamma rays. Now, this was a period of time, I think, where physicists generally recognized that new developments were immediately on the horizon, and they didn't have an understanding fully, for example, of the atom itself. Now, I didn't find, as I read the history of physics, that people were postulating that the Balmer lines were necessarily the result of creation. What they were doing was asking whether or not those lines were going to tell them something about a deeper understanding of the theory than they had at the present time. Now, coming back to 1987, we have come down the road, 80 some odd years, and as you well know, being in the physics department, we've progressed considerably in our understanding of nuclear physics. But you see, what I'm saying doesn't involve any deep, complex nuclear physics. It doesn't involve any deep, complex geology, supposedly, except that I claim it can't be reproduced. In other words, there are no principles here that need yet to be discovered that would enable people to go and do this synthesis or this falsification test. No one is claiming that we have to have new laws. That's the whole point, that the uniformitarian principle says the laws that we know today are sufficient to reform this granite. Whereas in 1900 with the Balmer lines or thereabouts, people were actively searching for not only an explanation for the Balmer lines, but for many other aspects of atomic and nuclear physics. So, I mean, I'm not interested in, we can have a difference of opinion, but I'm just telling you the reasons why I would feel differently about your comment.
Well, I think really what I was trying to suggest is that one has to consider the modeling possibilities. If you cannot generate a model, which you have generated a model, okay? At the same time, a model could have been generated in 1900 that said, the Creator is trying to send us a message. These are Genesis atoms. And nobody at that time could have refuted that until they were able to come up with a model which was able to take it into account. Now, you may have the answer. Your creative model may be the answer. But it also equally well, and considering the preponderance of evidence for the vast cosmological considerations and data which have been observed, it would seem that it's not likely, but it could happen. I'm just saying that consider the model. You say the only answer is, and I think that that is terribly presumptuous on your part.
Okay, is it... Let me say I'm happy for the applause when people, feel like that you have someone here representing your viewpoint. I think that's great. That's what we're here for. That's what America is all about. Now you need to let me respond. Your first name was Bill, is that right? Is that correct? I have to put my glasses on. I can't tell whether you're nodding. Was that correct? Bill. Would you mind if I call you Bill? Okay. Bill, just let me, without going into this thing too much further, I do want to say this. In the comment you just made, and the difference that I still see in what you're saying and how you're proposing an analogy here is this. Back in 1900, you see, if people were to ascribe a created explanation to the Balmer lines, it would not be possible for them to say, well, these are Genesis atoms, and isolate these atoms from anything else. Because every hydrogen atom that came into the laboratory and was put into the spectrometer would show those lines. And so they would end up having to say, you know, Genesis atoms everywhere. And so therefore they would be in the position of saying creation, creation in the here and now. Well, see, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there was something very specific that happened in the past. I'm saying that the Bible talks about a 6-day creation, something being called into existence. And I'm saying they're the crystalline basement rocks of the planet. I'm saying that there are sedimentary rocks on top of those. These relate to the flood. And I'm saying not that there's anything wrong with the present-day science of physics, chemistry, geology, as far as the mineralogy or petrology is concerned. I'm simply saying it's an interpretive framework in looking at the data. And I'm saying that this interpretive framework can be ascertained or judged on the basis of present-day experimentation. And I know it's difficult in a situation like this where people have reputations at stake, and this is a university, and people have courses in progress, and they're teaching students, you know, about various things for me to come and to challenge the status quo. I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. Nevertheless, in a free America, we have this opportunity to have the dialogue, and this is what we're having tonight. And let me say how much I appreciate your comments. Now, one other thing, you indicated, of course, you thought it was presumptuous. If that's all people are going to say about me as a result of what I'm saying, I'm home free. Bill, that was one of the kinder remarks. Oh, that's right. We got out of the line of questioning when someone came up. If creation is possible, why not prove your case by creation of a like sample? This seems more likely. Well, I'm glad that question. I'm glad to hear applause because I'm glad that question was asked. The fact of the matter is, you see, the whole point of my comments and talk tonight is that creation is something I can't do. Creation is something that belongs in the province of the Creator. The reason I'm saying this can't be duplicated is because I'm saying that natural laws cannot account for the occurrence of a piece of rock like this, or a rock like this, or the piece of the biotite. So I never claim. I say it's impossible to go back and try to form or, quote, create anything like this in the here and now. So this seems to be a misunderstanding of what I was saying. It says, what exactly are the halo's composition? Is the color due to what? It's a radiation damage process and interaction of the radiation with the rock itself. Now, I promised you earlier I was going to give you a short analogy. If I can get this back on the camera, I will try to do it. Dare I ask someone to turn the lights out just very briefly and then turn them back on? Wait a minute, let me turn this on. All right, let's see if I can find the button. Would you turn them out just very briefly? More out. No, these up here on up. Okay. Thank you. You can turn it back on now. This picture, when developed here in a few minutes, or a few seconds, will hopefully show you. And I want to make an analogy between the flash of light from the camera going to the audience, coming back through the open shutter, and impinging upon the film. The rock can be compared to the film. It registers the light particles. The film registers the light particles. The rock registers the interaction of the radioactive particles. I shouldn't say light particles, the light rays. The film registers the registration of the light rays, interaction of the light rays, whereas the rock registers the interaction of the radioactive particles. The synchronization of the light with the open shutter coming through is the same as the synchronization of the radioactive particles interacting with the rock. It takes both. The instantaneous flash of light coming through the open shutter, impinging upon a template. In this case, the film. In this case, the rock. And so this is the analogy, the way in which you've got to have an almost instantaneous crystallization, creation of the light or the radioactivity in order to retain or to maintain or to produce the photograph, which is the halo in the rock itself. Perhaps this will aid at least a little bit in another simple analogy of why I'm talking about instantaneous creation in terms of the halos. Let's see, Jim Watson, I've already answered. Here we have a question from Tom Green. Could you please explain how the halos could prove or disprove the constant decay rate of radioactive elements such as uranium-238? What I'm simply saying is this. If indeed there is creation, then we have the action of laws which are above and beyond anything that we know of today. We have something being called into existence which didn't exist before. You see, that breaks the chain of events from the present back to the infinite past. If the uniformitarian principle, which is that, if you break the chain of events, if physical laws have not always been the same as at the present time, you break that chain of events, you break that constant decay rate assumption. It goes on to say, are you saying that in order for the uniformitarian principle to hold true concerning the formation of the rocks, that the polonium halos half-lives were orders of magnitude longer than they are today? No, I'm not. I'm saying that creation itself is one of those special periods where the Creator intervened and the earth itself was brought into existence. There then followed a period of uniformity. And during that period of uniformity, the polonium decayed, the polonium halos formed. There was another long period of uniformity, and as you read the book, if you're interested, you'll find that there I postulate another period of uniformity and have the evidence given there in the book that the other uniformity, at least one other disuniformity, non-uniformity, was the flood. And so there are at least two separate periods of non-uniformity which break this uniformitarian chain. I've already answered that question. I think the rest of these, as far as I can tell, I have answered. And now I would like to turn my attention then to the last part of my talk tonight. Remember I said I'd... pardon, surely there's another one here. Well, if I didn't somehow, it may have gotten overlooked, but I'll be happy if you'll tell me what it was to respond.
Instead of having creation science taught at UT, which is the point of this debate, why not insist that scientists, teachers follow their own rules, the scientific method, when discussing evidence for and against evolution or the young Earth versus old Earth? Shouldn't there be the same result as that from teaching creation science?
Pardon me, would you mind repeating that? I'm afraid I got most of it, but I want to make sure I understand before I respond. And your name again?
Dr. Roland Bagby, Department of Zoology, and also a Christian.
All right.
All right. The question I'm repeating is, I'll read it again. Why not insist that scientists, teachers follow their own rules, that is the scientific method, when discussing evidence for and against evolution, young Earth versus old Earth? Wouldn't there be the same result as that from teaching creation science?
Well, let me say this. The first time you spoke, you prefaced that remark with another statement.
Yeah. Instead of having creation science taught at UT, why not insist, etc.?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to make it very clear tonight that I'm not in the process of insisting that creation science be taught anytime, anywhere, at any place. What I'm here tonight for is the exposition of evidence. My position is very simply that if there is valid scientific evidence for creation, why should it be suppressed? If indeed there is valid scientific evidence, then why should it be suppressed? I'm not in the position of trying to determine for anyone whether they should or should not teach it. My personal quest in this whole issue is a quest for truth. I'm here tonight to present this material. If someone, as has been indicated here tonight, really has something valid to put forth that would contradict or falsify what I've said, this is the greatest thing that can happen. Because the last thing in the world I want to do is to go down a road where I'm believing something that is wrong. Go ahead.
The purpose of this debate, I thought, was to determine whether or not creation science should be taught at UT. That was the question that was at the top of a lot of editorials. And so I assumed at the end of this we would figure out whether creation science should be taught at UT. I'm suggesting an alternative. If we have honest scientists, wouldn't we have the same result as having the creation side also put forth by creation scientists?
Well, there's a two-pronged answer to that. First of all, again, even though the title of the talk tonight, I didn't imply that it was a debate, but I'm very, very happy for the response. I, again, did not want to imply that I was trying to make it appear as if I was enforcing or trying to enforce or trying to prejudice or persuade people to teach creation science. It's simply a matter of coming and asking the question, should it be taught? The answer, I think, lies in whether there is evidence for creation to teach. If there is valid scientific evidence, then, as far as I can tell, the academic freedom that exists in colleges and universities should open the door for it to be done. Now, the other question, the statements you've made, of course, you put me on the spot in the sense that you've essentially said, you know, if people are honest, wouldn't such and such happen? I like to feel that everyone is honest, and I'm not here tonight to imply that anyone is dishonest. I'm here tonight to present information and to obtain rebuttals, to entertain questions and responses, and this is what we've had, but I, in no case, I'll have to bow away and shy away from the point of judging someone and what they're doing. But I appreciate your questions. I do appreciate that. You may surely go right ahead. Come up front.
I'm Robert E. McLaughlin, recently retired professor of geology here at the University of Tennessee, chairman of the committee opposed to curricular oxymora, or COCO. I was drawn to this topic tonight under the title, Should Creation Science be taught at UT? The papers are full of this topic. TV is here. It's a media event. And yet the speaker has not really addressed this question at all, which attracted many of us in the audience, I'm sure, including myself. Is not the true title of this talk, Should Creation Science be taught at UT, so that Robert B. Gentry might have a teaching position, which he apparently has had difficulty locating in his career.
Dr. McLaughlin, I think we know someone in common. David McQueen, is that correct? All right. I think David said he was going to write you before I came. Let me say I'm very happy and pleased that you came forward and made the comments that you made. It wouldn't have been a complete night without something like this. People can't hear you back there. I'm sorry, I didn't. I'll tell you, I can't hear what you're saying. If you come back to the microphone, make it so much easier for everyone.
I didn't understand your question about David McQueen. He warned you that I would be in the audience. Was that the
No.
the idea?
No. David indicated to me that he was writing a number of his old professors in the geology department to come to the meeting tonight. He wanted to hear what your response or what your impressions of the talk would be. And I said, I'm just very happy that you've been here tonight. You've been felt free to make them known to the audience.
David McQueen here tonight?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, I'll have to write David and tell him I'm pretty disappointed. I wish there was some way I could give him my $2 back.
Well, on that point, I'm very happy you stated what you did, because I did make the comment, I did choose the title for my presentation tonight specifically because the National Academy of Sciences, in their booklet, which I've talked about at great length in my book, has repeatedly said that they oppose the teaching of creation science in the public schools because there is no evidence for creation science. And so,
one wonders where the expenses for this presentation tonight have come from. The very glittery TV ads, the fine support publication around campus for this talk. Most everyone knows that this particular topic or this advocacy is on the agenda of the PTL Club and the other evangelical.
well, Dr. McLaughlin, I'm glad you said that too, I'll tell you.
So let's so maybe I could send this up to Lynchburg, where perhaps it came from, or someplace like that.
Well, Dr. McLaughlin, if you want to stay there, let me respond. First of all,
I'm not here to debate you.
All right.
I am disappointed that you did not address the issue, which is the topic of this talk tonight, rather than regurgitate this so-called evidence that you have for creation, but not evidence that creation should be taught as a science. This is
wait a minute. All right. Well, I'm glad you said that. Well, whenever you give me the chance, I'll make some comments.
But just so you have some more money to support your further research, I'll make that donation to your, whatever it might be.
Well, again, this could only happen in America. How great it is to be in a place where people can say anything and everything they want to say about you. Well, let's see now. Let's go back to the comment about me not really responding to the topic tonight, as I was just saying a few minutes ago. The reason I have done what I've done tonight is really very simple to explain. The National Academy of Sciences, which I've documented in my book several times, in which you undoubtedly have seen their booklet, as we've read tonight in that letter I sent to Dr. Press, they say over and over again, in fact, that was what was published in the Physics Today article, and I've read it again tonight, they say that essentially they do not want creation science to be taught because there is no evidence for creation. There is no evidence for creation, no scientific evidence whatsoever. And so I thought tonight that with the University of Tennessee faculty, what value would it be for me to come to an esteemed, educated, sophisticated audience and to stand up here and say, well, really what I believe about teaching creation science at the University of Tennessee is thus and so. My opinion doesn't really make any difference unless I back it up with something that is scientific. Yes, I am taking a position. I'm saying very clearly tonight that the evidence for creation science does exist, and I'm saying is that it really hasn't been refuted in spite of what was said tonight, and I will maintain that position until the gentleman in the geology department comes forth and actually produces this piece of granite. I'll say it has not been falsified, that it is scientific evidence, and that it does falsify the theory of evolution, and that indeed this does need to be taught. Now, that needs to be made very plain. The question is, I think, in what department? We've got two hands. Well, of course, As I point out in my book, I never advocate someone to teach anything that violates their conscience. I think that's the bottom line. That's why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, is because I don't think I want to believe something, it isn't true, and I certainly wouldn't want anyone else to say anything or teach anything that wasn't true, or they didn't believe was true. So, you know, after it's all over tonight, a lot of people aren't going to believe what I've said, irrespective of the evidence, irrespective of the fact that it has falsified. The laboratory of nature shows it hasn't. People are going to leave tonight, and they're going to believe what they believed before they came in. But I still say that with the academic freedom we have here in America, if indeed there were people, and I don't know that there are any people, but I'm saying if there were people who believed the evidence and saw its scientific value, the fact that indeed evolution is based on an erroneous uniformitarian principle, I'm saying why not teach the scientific evidence? That's what I'm saying. And I believe that if indeed there was an individual here, and indeed if it could be allowed by the administration or the students, or, you know, if someone wouldn't be run out of town because of it, I'm saying yes. Why not? If it's true, why not teach it? That's the basic premise that I'm operating on tonight. This is why I've gone through great lengths tonight to present not my personal opinion per se, but the scientific evidence which I've been publishing in the open scientific literature. Now, I'd like to also comment on another statement you made, that I'm here tonight in hopes of trying to conjure up or drum up a teaching position. Let me assure you, I don't think there's any chance in 1,000 years that after I've said the things that I've said here at the University of Tennessee, that the administration would even remotely consider the possibility, as you have well said. And I see there are people you know who do not want it. It's very clear of that. Well, let me assure you that, and the comment, of course, you made was that something I supposedly need. Well, the fact of the matter is I don't need it. And that bears on the other comment that you made. And for those of you who are in the audience, you might reflect on why would Dr. McLaughlin tonight associate me and this program and the funds for the program, why would he begin to associate me with the PTL Club? Is it possible? Is it possible? Kirk, would you come up, please? Is it possible that after the evidence has been presented and has not been refuted, and I say it will not be falsified, and I'll say the geology professor tonight who made such a dramatic claim will not be calling me in a week or 2 weeks or a month or a year. He will never call because he'll never be successful, because the granite synthesis experiment has already been done, because the granite synthesis experiment in nature has already been done. It's shown to be rhyolite, not granite. But Kirk is the president of the Society for Creation Science. And rather than my telling you where the money came from, I think I'll let Kirk tell you where the money came from. And before he does that, I want to remind you that when I started out 4 years ago, I invested every penny I had to begin my research. I borrowed money, and over the years that has continued. Now, Kirk, I'd like for you to tell the audience where the money came from for our program tonight.
I'm rather glad he called me to the front. I, too, like you, was somewhat curious in seeing the sound system, which cost $350 tonight. We had another offer for $1,100, but that was somewhat over our budget. Anyway, I had inquired where might these funds be coming from, and learned that there were businessmen who had a great enough concern and a great enough interest in this subject to want it to be made known to the nation and to the world. They have remained anonymous, and they have provided the funds for Mr. Gentry to write his book. I think that's a very honest way for him to conduct his business through the private grants of concerned citizens to continue this effort. Thank you for asking.
In other words, I paid for it out of my own money and was hoping, of course, that the sale of the books tonight would cover my expenses. Obviously, that isn't going to happen. Obviously, I'm going to be greatly the loser in terms of my finances in doing what I've done. But as far as I'm concerned, it was all worth it. Thank you, Kurt. But I'd like to say this as well. There was no one connected with that organization that was just mentioned. In fact, I have nothing to do with the organization that was mentioned here tonight. There's someone back there. Would you like to moderate the question or come forward?
The gentleman that just spoke, Dr. McLaughlin, says he was somewhat disappointed. But he's not near as disappointed as most of us are, and that he is here, and instead of refuting the evidence you presented, decides instead to attack the man. That is it seems, over the past several years, has been the method that those who deny creation scientists have taken. If the evidence is there to refute it, we all call for them to present it. And if not, to get behind it, but not attack the man.
Well, what can I say, except, of course, I appreciate the comments. However, I don't want anyone to feel that you hurt my feelings. I've gone into this, and over the years, I want to assure you the remarks that have been made tonight are quite kind compared to some of the things that have been said over the years. There are many, many other things that I could say, but it's getting late. I've got to stop. I did receive a response from the National Academy of Sciences, and we want to show that letter right now, and then we're going to close. All right. Dr. Press, this time, was gracious enough to send me a reply, and I appreciate that. As you can see, he says, I am responding to your letter of March 24, 1987. The booklet, Science and Creationism, A View from the National Academy of Sciences, provides in detail an answer to the main point of your letter, the reasons why this institution, meaning the Academy, maintains that creationism should not be taught in the schools. You see, what he's doing is reiterating the main point of the booklet. The main point of the booklet is simply that there is no evidence for creation science, and that's why I geared the presentation tonight on a scientific level. Your work on radio halos is a matter of record in journals and can be debated by scientists. That is the way science works. I cannot agree with your contention that one small piece of data invalidates the vast body of evidence from geology, astronomy, biology, radio dating, the fossil record, genetics, and other fields that, taken together, irrefutably show the age of the Earth is about 4.5 billion years, and that life on the Earth had its beginnings billions of years ago. Now, I want to stop right there and respond. First of all, as I've indicated before, creation science is not going to change anything with respect to the here and now. Physics, laboratory chemistry, laboratory biology, there is no difference. As a scientist today who believes in creation in the past, certainly physical laws today are operating on a constant basis. The question, though, is whether the interpretation of the data is correct. And as individuals sometimes do, Dr. Press has taken the science of the present, which is valid, and has lumped that with the science of the past, past, or what is presumed to know about the past, when he, of course, talks about geology, and, of course, assuming that he must mean historical geology or the interpretation of geology, and thereby equating the historical interpretive aspect of geology with the so-called, for example, mineral identification and the physical aspects of geology which can be validated in the here and now. In other words, what he's done is to lump some things which are absolutely correct in terms of the here and now, present-day science, and then lump that with the interpretive framework and say that all this shows that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and life had its beginnings billions of years ago. Notice this, and I'll read the last statement, then we'll go back. Notice this. Dr. Press does not even mention the falsification test. Doesn't even mention it. This is what it's all about. People have said creation science is not science because there's no way to falsify. There is a way to falsify. And there's also a way to tell whether the evolutionary principle is valid or not. And as of this night, the evidence is that the evolutionary fundamental premise of the evolutionary theory is wrong, that evolutionary theory is falsified. Here's the last statement. There's a quote from Albert Einstein inscribed on his statue on the ground of the Academy building as follows. The right to search for truth implies also a duty. One must not conceal any part of what one has recognized to be true. Well, from the very inception of my work, I presented everything that I have found to the scientific community in an attempt to get a response. I have hidden and concealed nothing. You may reflect tonight as you leave whether the same has been true in respect to the way in which the work that I have done has been presented to the scientific community. My whole book is an attempt to reveal everything that is done. And the thing I want to reveal the most tonight, which is yet to be responded to by factual evidence, is the evidence for creation in terms of the falsification test, the Creator creating something which today cannot be reproduced. I would urge you to consider all the evidence. This I have done. This, too, is the way science works. I would suggest tonight, in considering all the evidence, it is the burden of the other side to consider the falsification test and the evidence of the halos, which have yet to achieve an explanation within conventional science. Thank you, and good night.